And I'm going to Florida on.
Yeah, you get the microphone.
So I missed that planning board meeting too, so I can't miss them both.
Well-
Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Master Plan Implementation Committee's meeting of September 5. And I would like to ask Jonathan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we have a brisk but filled agenda for tonight, but I think the best place to start is with the best. I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Monica Lamboy from the Collins Center for Public Management, and she's here to, shall we say, bring us some indication of what it's like to do in a variety of making plans come alive. And without further ado, Ms. Lamboy.
Thank you. Good evening. I have a handout. I have two handouts, but I'll do one at a time.
Can you go back?
So I'm Monica Lamboy from the Edward J. Collins Jr. Center for Public Management at UMass Boston. Our group was created by the state legislature to offer technical assistance to cities, towns, school districts, public agencies, really understanding how hard folks are working just to keep the lights on, in town halls nowadays. And we do an array of different things: financial forecasts, capital improvement plans, human resources. We also do economic development work and strategic planning, which I very often the lead on the project. So when I had a chance to talk to Michael, and I've looked through your plan at a high level, and really hats off to the people of Littleton for having come together in this very, very comprehensive way to put together this master plan. Not a lot of our Massachusetts communities do that. Not all of them do it. Not all of them are as comprehensive, the ones that I've sort of looked at. So I think it's incredibly powerful to have that in writing and have had that conversation. So, and I understand you're charged with implementing it, so I do understand that's a big shoes that you have. So the handout I just gave you is a little bit of projects that I've worked on. I might touch on a couple of them and how it relates to the Common project. I did have an opportunity to go through the area. I went to the T station, through the Common, I went out to the New Market Basket, so I've been tootling around, and I'm like, I've been here before. We're all over the state. So what I often work with communities is doing what you've just done, which is gathering the factual data. Let's understand what our trends are, where we've come from, where we are right now. Are those trends pointing in a direction that we like, or perhaps not? So if we like that direction, how do we amplify that? If it's a trend that is not beneficial to us, how do we start to change the future? Where are we strong, and we can build on those? Where are we weak? And with land use, there's choices, right? Not all of us can be New York City, Cambridge, Boston, but every place has its own unique strengths. So I do a lot of that kind of work, which you've already done, talking about, where are we now and where do we want to go. I've also done, quite a bit of implementation work in different areas. I'll mention Somerville, because there quite a bit of commonality with what you have here. So Somerville is very tiny. It was largely built, but came up with a grand idea of what it wanted to be. And what was really exciting was that you've talked to pretty much everybody that could say the same thing: transit-oriented, pedestrian-oriented, interesting, diverse, people of all ages, families friendly, and also, young adult friendly. And you could talk to anybody. And so there was real power in having everybody speak with a common voice. We're also very aware of how land use affects the municipal resources. Pretty much everybody could say 85% of the tax base was residential, 15% was commercial at the time when I was there. Cambridge is 85% commercial and 15% residential. very different stories. And I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago, residents blocked an IKEA store that had gotten a permit. They sued. Do you all recall that? Most people don't know the reason why. They thought there was not enough development, right? It was very hard to find a community in the US that has stopped development because it wasn't big enough. They felt that the location on the Mystic River was so critically important, there was so much land, that to put a big box retail with a sea of parking surface was just not a good use. And it slowed things down, but they were able to have the kind of conversation that you've all had here. And it took them a while to get to that, but to really put a strong vision for what they wanted for that area. But it wasn't easy, even with the vision. So there's the infrastructure piece. How do you get the sewer, water in there? Because if it's all on the developer, that will affect the density that needs to have. You know, they run very detailed pro formas of, these are all our costs, here's what we can get for the square footage. Yeah. So getting the water, getting the sewer, getting the road infrastructure in that case. And it happened to be trying to hit the ground right when the 2007 recession hit. So the upside of that was that there was a lot of resources available for shovel-ready projects, and it was very shovel-ready. So a lot of what I did was to try to help build the case, the grant applications, modify the concepts to try to get this all together. So that infrastructure piece, and often because it's below ground, doesn't get a lot of attention from the general public. And I know that's one of the challenges you have with the common is the wastewater treatment. We've done a report that's on the Collins Center website about the relationship between water and wastewater investment and economic development, where we looked at a number of case studies. And the large picture conclusion was the fewer impediments there are to the developers, the easier it is for them to come in, the quicker they can turn the property around and to get it occupied, the better. So that sort of long-term thinking on that infrastructure is really vitally important for all of our communities. Some of our communities are becoming water constrained as well, and there's also environmental reasons why different sorts of solutions should be in place. So that was a report that we did for the MWRA, which I know is not here, but they're not all that far. There are a couple towns over the furthest town out. So infrastructure, subsurface infrastructure, the street level infrastructure, your roads, your sidewalks, your street trees, your benches, all of that's really important. And then, you know, thinking about the mix of uses that you want to have there, and making it substantial enough that it becomes a place people want to go to, substantial enough that it will work out financially, and, you know, can be the kind of transformation that you're all looking for. So I'm a little bit all over the place. So a couple other or work that we did. One piece that may be interesting to you is the work we did for the Gaming Commission on development agreements. So that was when somebody's coming into a community to do a relatively large development, there's often a process of talking to the developer about what they're going to contribute, what they're going to invest in, what the municipality is going to produce. And sometimes our communities don't have the level of sophistication that the developer comes in and the developer can just walk right over. So that study, which is also on our website, not only talks about what kinds of components could be in an agreement, but we actually put, I think, 4, perhaps 5 agreements that we thought were really sort of exemplary in the report, with annotations of some of the clauses that were in there that could be particularly powerful. So that's an important tool. One of the things we did in Somerville on the Assembly Square is pursued I-cubed funding, which is a state program, infrastructure investment, and I forgot what the third I is. And I'm not sure how active it is right now, but what it is basically doing is if a project or a series of projects can show with some level of certainty the number of new job creation that would take place, the state is willing to come forward and do the bonding for the infrastructure. It's timely, it's timing, very time-consuming to gather the data. You'll need experts to do it, but the result can be very powerful. So you'd have to show not that business A moved from some other town into your town, because that's net neutral to the state. They're not going to add new jobs that way. But if something could potentially come in and expand, where it couldn't have expanded someplace else, or a new industry could be created, or something like that, that could be penciled out. Retail in that kind of mix doesn't give you a lot of credit because the whole retail industry is off, but different kinds of office jobs, different kinds of manufacturing jobs, those sorts of things can produce some real revenue to the state in the form of income tax and sales tax that they will then forward the, help fund the investment. So that's, I think, something very interesting maybe to look at. Another project also in Somerville was district improvement financing. This is relatively new to Massachusetts, but it's been used elsewhere. I worked in California for a long time, where the community, you draw a boundary around an area where you expect future investment and identify what your goals are in the plan. Then the growth in the taxes within that boundary has to be reinvested back inside the boundary. So, for example, I looked at your graphic over here of the Common project. As a DIF district, and it would start small in year one, the little increment of growth would be small because it's just going to be natural change. But if you can reapply that into a street improvement or removing an impediment to a development, then that growth then comes back in, and so on and so on and so on. And the engine can get pretty substantial in a near term if those investments are made wisely. The challenge, and it has to be fully explored, is that growth is not available to the general fund budget, right? So it has to be really thought through and made sure that it's properly located and you know what your investments are going to be. But if done well, by the end of the time period wherein the DIF district is disappears, now that revenue turns back to the general fund revenue.
Is that an agreement just within the town's planning process? In the sense that if we decided we created a diff and we go forward, and then at some period of time, we're just like either, okay, enough's enough, or we simply can't afford to do this any longer, is it strictly our agreement that we dissolve at our own purpose?
There is I haven't looked at the legislation. I believe there is a process to eliminate it, but if you've bonded with the revenues in mind,
the
you
bond,
have to
back
pay,
the
you
bonds,
have to
yeah.
pay those
Sure.
bonds, But the truth of the matter is the municipality does guarantee the bonds.
Right.
Even though
They're
it's
gonna
being
get paid
funded
one
off
way
the
or the other. Right.
DIF, it's still really the town's debt. But I think it gives persons considering investing in the community an idea of what the community is going to be investing in the area. You will get pretty detailed about what your goals are and how much is needed to accomplish those different goals. Again, when we're talking about that sort of infrastructure that's going to make it easier for somebody to come in right away, this is a way to do that. District improvement. What else do I want to offer? One project that we did maybe was a project we did for Maynard when they have the computer site that you have too. And it was a very suburban, the developer.
Was it digital?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It used to be, yes.
So the first, well, there've been a number of different iterations of the property, and the one that came forward in, I think it was 2013, which had some real interest behind it, was a very big boxy, large sea of parking development. And our recommendation was largely neutral. You know, here's the challenges with it, and here's the strengths. But the idea that you only get to do some of these things one time. So does it make sense to wait for the right solution for the site that would be, you know, long-term beneficial to the community? And at the end of the day, the residents did vote down the change to the zoning ordinance that was proposed by the developer. And basically, so your zoning and what you say in your zoning is also really important. I did notice in your zoning code that there's a base zone and an overlay zone right now, and that one of the recommendations is to redo the zoning. I personally think it's really important to paint a single clear picture of the future that you want, and I find overlays districts phenomenally confusing, and I've worked in zoning in a long time. So, because oftentimes it's, you could do X, or you could do Y, but then somebody's like, do you want X or Y? So I think having that conversation, however long it takes, to put down, you know, in some very clear terms, this is the stylistically what we want, these are the mix of uses that we want. The Union Square zoning that we did in Somerville also has kind of a commonality where there were some historic structures, other ones had been taken down to one story. We wanted to create a cohesive future. In that case, the Green Line was coming in, so we knew there would be interest very quickly. So we took 2+ years to do that zoning so that we would have enough conversations with the community to make sure that people were okay with it. We also had a number of architects that were willing on a pro bono basis to, we gave them different sites and we said, under this draft, what would you create? And with the idea that if they went through the exercise, that they would, one, tell us what was not working in the draft code, and that was really helpful. But two, they were able to create visual images. It didn't take a lot of time. Visual images of what they would put on that site. And we were able to put that together into a one big 3D map that we then presented to the community, and people were like, I can see that. A lot of folks can't interpret plan drawing into 3D, and this was a way to do that. And we even did it like from a hill looking down onto the site, as well as at street level. Once you have it in the CAD and in the different software, you can manipulate it so you can see it, not manipulate it in a bad word, but you can move it around so you can see things. So I think that kind of imagery can be really powerful and helpful to people to say, yes, that is the future that I see, or no, you know, that's absolutely not.
So in that scenario planning exercise, it sounds like you had enough information to go off of in terms of direction to be able to provide to the architects? Did you
We
provide
had
more
the
than?
draft code, which included floor area ratios, which basically tells you how many square feet you can build on the site. We had the height limitations that we were proposing. We had the parking requirements that we were going to propose. In that code, there were particular areas where we mandated ground floor retail, that a certain percentage of the frontage, because we often forget that, right? And then you get banks and other uses that are not retail occupying those spaces. So we actually wrote, there's a map that says these streets will be ground floor retail. And it was so detailed as to say, if there is a residential above, because it's mixed use, this is how much of the frontage the residential entrance can be, so that we have that kind of unbroken residential. So anyway, it had a high level of detail. We were close to being ready to unveil it to the general public. And we said, would you like to collaborate on this? And every one of them, I think we had 5 different firms, were willing to do that, and individual architects too. It's kind of fun.
Sounds like it was for them.
It was. So that's interesting. One of the things we did there, we changed the way the use table was done. Very often, you see these very row by row by row by row by row, multi-page use tables of bookshop versus hair salon versus this. We created what we called use clusters, and we said largely, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So we created buckets of uses. And once that sort of bucket was approved and built, it could change within that group. And they were relatively large groups. So it was sort of retail and service, it was food, restaurant, a couple of other ones. But it reduces the need to come back for a special permit once the space is built, unless there's a really substantial change in the use. So not only do you have to get it open on day one, you want it to keep, the area to keep being vital and not have sort of vacancies breaking up so we felt that use table would do that. You'd also sort of see what the market at the end of the day would be. There's only so many sort of mini markets and so many of these things that will be able to survive, and nobody will try to open the next one if they don't feel like there's a market demand for different things.
How about the corridor commercial districts? Can you describe those a little bit?
Sure.
Details?
Our priority there was to create street frontage. So that was another place where the ability to break the street was very constrained. So the parking had to be behind. It was a mixed-use zone so that we would have commercial on the ground floor, office or residential above. It was neutral on that. We paid a lot of attention to where it abuts other residential properties to make sure that there was a step-back process. And then different heights in different areas, partially to create diversity of the area. If you have a long stretch, you may want to break it into smaller. People can tell by height if this is like an intense place to be versus it's lower over here. It may not be the visual center. So that was part of the difference in the heights.
So the idea would be that you created different types of corridors and try to balance it out throughout the.
The framework was largely the same.
Okay.
What varied was the intensity.
Okay.
So how high you could be and how many square feet you could build.
Okay, so each corridor was different in those respects.
Yeah, or
from the other
even,
ones next to it.
sort of even in one stretch, it could
Yeah.
start lower and then
Okay,
build.
I see.
So
Okay.
if you had either an intersection or you had an
Okay.
important transit location,
Okay.
it would be more intense there, a little bit less
Gotcha.
elsewhere.
Okay.
But yeah, the parking in the back dramatically reduced the parking requirements. In our Winthrop project that I did, I took their parking requirement for restaurants and was able to show that the square feet of parking space was larger than the actual restaurant establishment. And where you have limited land, to have 2/3 of your property as parking and only 1/3 of it as developable can be problematic. So the other important thing to look here, because it's a pretty compact area, is where would you have, could you create public parking lots and therefore alleviate that burden off of the private property, or at least in part? Or at least try to get shared use opportunities where if something's open in the day, somebody else could use that at night, so that if you want to create a critical mass, that there is enough structure and enough activity there, and it's not just a parking lot. One other thought, I'm going to move on to your plan. One other thought is their studies have shown people will walk farther if it's a nice walk. Right now, I imagine it's a little bit hard to walk from one property to another in the common area. So how to make it a nice place to walk. And people won't realize how far they've gone if they're sort of enjoying the walk. And in a high-traffic area, creating some kind of buffer between the pedestrian and the traffic. And I don't mean like wall or anything, but even a parked car serves as a buffer. It gives a little bit of separation from the moving vehicle and the pedestrian or the cyclists. A lot of places are gradually moving the bicycle lane on the inside of the parking. It's done a lot in Europe, so where the bike lane is located could also help be a buffer. Some design thoughts. So that's kind of background. I don't think I have enough copies.
Oh, you gotta leave. We were fine till you got here.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I'll trade one of these for the first copy that I didn't get. Wait.
I'll donate my two. One's at the end. I just need to look at them.
Wanna- We can share one.
You guys share one.
Go ahead.
Where do you want to be?
So at the top, I just listed the
Maybe
strategies
too.
that you had in your plan, which I thought were very thoughtful. I don't think I would have much to add. Just a couple of questions in considering the common project. The area is very much a space that you move through. So how would you make it a destination? How would you incentivize people to get out of their vehicles? So the common, retail thing is location, location, location. So having eyes in the area is very important. But figuring out what's going to incent people to get out of their vehicle is going to be an important part of your master planning effort. The commuter rail station is actually 2.4 miles from the common area. So if you wanted to try to attract people from perhaps elsewhere in the region who might come on a train, then you're going to need to figure out how to get them there. Even if it's for a special event, and events are great placemaking. I use my in-laws often as an example. If they can come to a place one time and they feel like it's okay and safe to go there because maybe there's an event, they'll keep coming back. Oh, I saw that restaurant, let me go back again. I saw that shop, let me go back again. So events can be very placemaking, but if you want to bring folks from outside of the immediate area, how to get them there from the train station. The language in the plan mentioned redevelopment is supposed to follow, quote, historic precedents. So I wasn't sure how high that meant. There's a phrase in there. It's important that the height be substantial enough to cover the cost of the investment. And this is often what is really hard, and that's where the visual piece will come in. One of the things we did do is we stepped back so that you could have a three-story on the sidewalk, and then it would step back and then go up. And what you realize is you can't see the higher parts sometimes. If you have it staging back, then what's most perceptible is that first wall, and then as things go back, you don't really know that it's there. Yet, there could be great units back there could be great offices, That's one way to allow a little more intensity without affecting the street level
It's
visibility.
actually interesting because Littleton tends to have a lot of homes like that you think initially it's just this little home, but then you look behind and it just keeps going.
Right.
So it's very deceiving, yeah.
There is quite a bit of depth in a number of these parcels, so you could do something like that where the front gives you one impression, as long as there would be a reason for somebody to go into that depth. I did notice that there's more jobs than residents in the workforce, which is often a goal that communities set. We want to get to a 1-to-1 ratio. You guys have more than a 1-to-1, which is great. So it means basically the daytime population, because all the workers are coming in, is larger than your nighttime population. Some of our communities are the opposite, and the restaurants can't survive during the lunch hour. They have a really hard time because the place empties out. Although the evening may be booming, it's hard for them. So you have the opposite, but form affects how the workers, what they do with the little bit of time they have for lunch. So if it's a long distance to a great place, they may choose not to go there very often. Or honestly, if there's cafeterias in these large office buildings, that's an easy magnet. I can just go down and get that, and there's no incentive to go away. Quite honestly, in some of the districts, we prohibited cafeterias. Now, it's a different development style, it's very pedestrian-oriented, so we could do that. But that is, how would you get people during the day to go there?
Does anybody know some of some of the inside parts of this? I mean, how many of those jobs are at IBM? And I assume IBM has a cafeteria.
It's over their employment is over 2,000, and 99.9% of the folks who work at IBM don't live in Littleton. And the other thing is, further down the road, interestingly enough, is the Point, where the market
Yes.
basket thing, and that also represents there's a fair amount of what we'll call corporate entertaining that goes on. In other words, seminars and all the rest, for obvious reasons, as Boston's more expensive. And the hotel in the Point apparently is doing very, very well.
Well, that's
Because
interesting.
it's because this area is hotel room poor for the region. So it's very interesting.
Since day one, right?
The impact of the Point on what we're talking about in the common is of interest to, I think, everyone in town. So it's a subject,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's where maybe the transportation issue
Sure.
intertwines. Is there a way that some of the visitors that are staying there would want to come down? It's not very far.
No, it
but
isn't.
They're probably not going to necessarily walk on their own initiative.
There's the hill, which apparently is,
That's right.
I watched them turn around and go back as I'm coming up, so, okay.
They can stagger over there very easily.
I'm sorry?
They can stagger over there very easily.
So of the 7,600 jobs, 2,000 of them are at IBM, you think?
I would say at
Michael?
least, yeah.
Does somebody know that, Anthony? or-
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it's according to their VC operation out on the West Coast, that's what the numbers that they use here, yeah.
Well, it's not terribly far from the central area we're talking about, right?
What is it? Yeah.
That's maybe a really easy group to first try to come down
Yeah.
to be there. Your property ownership is important. Is the owner largely satisfied with what they have and they're sort of holding it and everything's fine? Or is it a property owner that would be willing to take the time to invest? Could a partnership be formed where one party comes with property and the other party comes with the expertise to develop it, but that ownership and the relatively small parcels, so how to get them to work together, I think it's going to be pretty important. The DIF district resources could be used for land acquisition, if that's a goal, if that needs to happen.
I think one other scenario you missed is outright sale of the property from current ownership to new ownership. I think that's something that we all anticipate may very well happen if there is an effort to rezone and build up the infrastructure to support other types of usage.
Yep. Yeah, it's probably going to have to happen. I saw the concept of the smart sewer, which I think is the way to go, and it will get you attention just by having that kind of environmentally sensitive concept. The news article said that it may be optional to tie in. I hope that your study is going to look at that and how that would affect the return and the viability of the sewer district that's created. I think that could be challenging if people don't opt in. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to opt in, but maybe not.
The engineers are very well aware that that's a key component to our plan, and has been for a number of years, and they accepted their charge with that understanding, so. And past polls of the potentially affected property owners had more than a 80-90% interest rate, so.
That's great. That's great to hear.
And I think to tie in a couple of the questions, I'm not sure that the current or potential future property owners understand what could be done with their property if they would tie in. And that ties back to your having the architects do some of the visioning. But not necessarily for the town, but more for the property owners themselves.
In that direct dialogue with the potentially affected property owners within both the existing limited sewer district plus any potential growth area is part of phase 2 with the engineers at the towns
You know,
engaged.
I think you might have missed the exciting part that we had earlier. We were talking about different ways to show visually what is possible. And
Well, what I'm saying is the dialogue with the property owners explaining those possibilities is next up on the,
Good,
and that's not news to the engineers or the sewer advisory
yeah,
committee.
it's the methods and the approach and
Yeah, it's already happened once, but it's gonna happen again, and we'll have more of a fine-tuned message about what's possible there. A lot of them get it, and that's why there was such a high positive rate in terms of supporting doing it.
And again, I'll return to the point where it's not just the people that own the property, it's potential owners of the property. And there are plenty of them that will get it without being told, because they do it for a living. They're out there and they're investigating and they're researching, and they've built other things, or they've gone through a process where maybe they didn't get to build, but they understand what it entails. The idea of enticing them by showing them rather than telling them is great, and I think it'll have an impact. But I also think that opportunity to show rather than tell is as important, if not more important, to the general public
Right.
than it is to potential developers. They'll get it.
Right,
you
'cause
know.
you need to
If that one doesn't get it, somebody else will,
Right.
you know.
You'll need to get strong support for whatever rezoning that you do. I will say, and I think I mentioned this to Michael, sometimes you'll find a property owner that just has a fixed impression, and that's a term we use in performance evaluations, right? You met the person for the first time and you thought they were great, or you thought they're terrible, or whatever it would be. That's what fixed impression is. But it also happens with people that own property. Oh, it's always been this way, it's always going to be that way, they can keep talking to me, and I know it's not going to change. So that is, for some folks, maybe the hurdle to get them past, that yes, this actually can happen, yes, this could be very beneficial. I had a property owner where we probably tripled the development potential on the site, and nope, not going to do it, not going to do it. So that's just one of the things to think about. And we talked a little bit about the compete with or coexist with the market basket. And the trends in retail are very blurry right now, but I did on the backside pull out some articles that I had looked at. So with internet shopping, discount shopping centers, it's been very difficult to figure out what's happening. They also said that I guess the millennials are now larger than the baby boomers, and they have different behaviors in how they shop. So what does this mean? So I think the bullets, the 1 through 12 here, are pretty interesting. I'll read a couple of them out. Retailers who promote product quality, transparency, and sustainability will flourish. Stores providing unique in-store experience instead of the same old, same old. They'll use mobile payment solutions. Small stores are in, large stores are out. Personalization, we hear a lot about that. The workers calling somebody up saying, I have a new product in, do you want to come in and see it? Same-day shipping. this term called retailtainment, which is basically where entertainment and retail are starting to come together. So if you're able to buy a lot of things remotely from home, what would get you out? If you're at a place because there's something interesting happening, or you're there because you went to the movie and now you're walking down the street and you're seeing something. So that the reason for people to physically come to a location where there are then items to be sold. Yeah, I'm at a museum, let me get something from the gift shop because I want to keep a memory of what I just did. So that's going to be a big part of any kind of area, especially such a tight-knit, sort of hopefully pedestrian-friendly area. That feeling is going to be really important. Specialty stores, apps, services, and just the whole technology piece. So I really wanted to kind of, that placemaking, the reason to get people to come out, whether it's great restaurants or whatever, and then to do their shopping is really important.
The question of how, obviously, one big question is how the common area relates to the point. And I suppose, we tend to think that the point is detrimental to developing the retail and other things at the common. Are there possible ways that it could be a benefit rather than a detriment? Does this?
Cooperative instead of competitive.
Right.
Sure.
I think so. I'll start with one caution/caveat. A lot of times with new construction, even mixed use, the developers expect, and some of it's the way the funding is, they expect the first floor to pencil out as one part of the performer, and then the upper stories as a separate piece. That means basically your ground floor rents in new construction are very high, very high. And that can be very difficult for non-chain businesses to occupy those spaces. So that would be another thing I would try to think of in the zoning and also in your agreements. I did meet with a gentleman who was working with the property owners in Kendall Square, and for years, the ground floor was empty in most of these because they were trying to do this. They said you had to be, so it was dead. And he said, you're making all your money on floor 2 through whatever. We know you're making a profit on those. You can be less heavy-handed on the ground floor with a goal of trying to get some interesting things there that make people want to work there and visit there. And they were able to do that. But that's going to take the developers to think a little bit differently. Maybe the town can think about how to incentivize that. And at least in your development agreements, if you do write them, some sort of piece. So that's a long way of getting around. I think it probably needs to be different, right? It needs to be something different than what you see there, so that people from the point will want to come to the common, people visiting the common will want to go to the point, so that it can have that partnership, that synergy, as opposed to a competition.
I'd just like to, echo Mike's, one of Mike's thoughts on the way we approach the point as part of this. I don't see it as a competitor at all. I think we ought to be just mindful of the differences. If you're going to the point, you have to drive to get there, more than likely, unless you're walking over from IBM or you're walking over from the high school. And, there's a limited amount of, potential and, end uses there. The common's different. It's gonna, businesses in the common area, Great Road, King Street, are gonna ideally or optimally attract people who are driving through if we pull them off the road. And I think it's different that way. Plus, there's a lot of existing businesses, unlike the point which every business was created there. So you kind of want to have a mind, I would think, toward creating complementary businesses where if we already know people are coming to go to the bank or whatever else it is, then what else would they potentially want to do? The other observation I have is all these comments 1 through 12 on the future of retail for folks who work, directly or tangentially with the future. This isn't the future retail, this is the reality for the past 10 to 15 years. I would really be interested to know what the future retail is. I understand that it comes with the price tag. This is the existing, reality that every
can figure
every
that out. I'm
buyer,
gonna be sitting
seller,
talking to you
renter,
guys.
or builder knows. Yeah.
Well, just to give a shot across our bow, it's very funny you mentioned Disney is now getting very interested in fusing of, quote, we'll call it entertainment.
It's already been happening. It's been happening. I worked for a developer 20 years ago that Mills Malls that, they put in like jousting things and, all these entertainment, attractions. That's not really new. It may or may not be applicable in Littleton, but that part of it is already there. Entertain, the whatever it is, the retail entertainment,
So
interchange.
can we talk about the money aspect of it in terms of the work that has been done? How do you then figure out what the returns are going to be for the community, whether it's in multipliers or with the budgets for these communities, being able to get additional revenues? How does that play into what work you do?
Are you talking about trying to understand the impact on the tax base?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, I think your tax assessor is your best, partner on that, where you could literally come up with a couple of zoning, same concept, come up with a couple of scenarios, say it's got X square feet of this and Y square feet of that, here's how it is, and they could probably give you an idea of what that would be valued at. And I think that's a fair part of the dialogue when you're talking about changing and rezoning an area. Because for people to feel like they want to embrace that change, they may want to know that'll strengthen our town's ability to provide services, as well as giving us a place to go to. So I think they would be very helpful with that.
And in any of your work, in any of these examples, is that part of the work that you've done before?
I haven't really done that. It's doable. You could also look at other communities if there's something that you saw that you thought, hey, that's a good comparison to what we're looking for, and try to find out from them too. I can do that. Yeah, that is something we can do.
Are there any additional questions?
I just have maybe a quick 2-sentence response on, you have multiple other projects in here, and you have the things that I'm interested in, and maybe they're just available on your website that we can research. 5-year financial forecasts, capital improvement plans, and then you have facilities maintenance, town/school collaboration. Do those go together, or are those two separate concepts?
So that are other things that I do and the center does. So yes, we worked on town-school collaboration in general, HR, finance, procurement.
Okay.
But then also in facilities maintenance. I've looked at town facility operations separate from school facility operations.
Okay.
Yeah, we do
Okay.
that. In the capital planning, I think I'm on my 17th capital plan in the last 2 years. So the community compact grant funding just opened up for the next application period. So a number of these are called best practices, and the town could apply for that.
How about the 5-year financial forecast? Is that more oriented towards operational forecasting versus capital planning?
So the way we do it, and our partners at Local Services, we have a similar type of model. We will run the operating budget, but we have a specific capital tab that we will create to help have the conversation, what % of revenue can we commit to capital? What does that mean to the forecast going forward?
So it's like a tool that you then develop with the town that
It's a
they can
tool,
use?
and then the town administrator can use it each year to create the budget.
Interesting, thank you.
Coffee?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much.
Very nice to meet everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Should we take a little break?
Yeah, let's take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, there's coffee, please. I mean, I held up the entire Dunkin' Donuts there.
Maureen, do we shut off while we have the break, or do we just keep
Yeah.
going?
How long are we breaking?
5 minutes?
You don't have to shut it off. do you?
Yeah, this will look like we're busy.
Okay.
Don't get in a fight. Thank you, Mary.
Anyone else like some coffee? No,
Sure.
it smells good.
All right.
Just stay where you are, Paul.
Okay. What's under that other box too, Anna? Is that just coffee? Okay.
Yeah, it's just
No
the,
donuts, Paul.
Well, yeah, a man can hope.
Thank you.
there's creamers and sugars. How do you take yours, Paul?
Well, I'll take it black right now, thanks.
Gary, it's right here.
Thank you.
Mike, Jonathan, any coffee?
No, no, thank you. I
Mark,
don't drink coffee.
I'm sorry, thank you very much.
Do you want any coffee, Mike? Did you want any coffee?
No, that's it.
Okay. So we can, we can resume, and the next subject on our agenda for tonight is, very quickly, the update on the initial projects, excuse me. And I can report that presentations were made to, in no particular order, to the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, Council on Aging, and also to the Economic Development Committees.
And planning board too.
And the Planning Board is finally the Planning Board. And I'm sorry to say finally because we consider them sort of part of our patrons. So, and what's happened is that, as you may or may not know, quite a number of things are going today, are in process of moving toward, hopefully toward the town meeting, and that includes the very important changes in zoning to assist and to incentivize the construction of targeted housing, mainly for, hopefully for seniors. Also the establishment of a housing trust, and the changes in zoning to make it, to incentivize a developer to come in and actually start putting together a project that could appeal both price-wise and appearance-wise to many of our seniors here in town. In terms of transportation, the visits have been made to some of the key players in town. However, I do know that we have a member here who's probably going to follow up almost immediately. We're going to go over the assignments that each of you have. The space needs, we're awaiting the report from the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to find out how that has worked out. The historic survey, I would imagine, is near completion, if not done.
No,
No.
no,
Sorry.
there's we have got to the point of hiring the consultant as of beginning in the summer. And she has submitted her first part of what she sees as a 4-phase project. So it should be done by the middle of the fiscal years, sometime around winter, I don't know, December, January, something like that. So,
Okay.
it's not,
Well, just in case, I made contact with a couple of local archaeologists and historians to see what was in their private collection, to see, sort of, to put a context around, hopefully, a more comprehensive report coming through. So I'm looking forward to having that finished as well, as soon as possible. And finally, the effort to include the master plan project costs into the yearly budgeting process is just now getting underway. It's going to take some, shall we say, some more work on our part to make it part of the culture. And conversations, at least, no one's turned it away flat, but old habits die hard. We'll have to see how it goes for the next step. Because the town can no longer, and the financial projections make it very clear, the town can no longer afford, shall we say, the stand in line, it's your turn kind of point of view that's been dominant through the last several years. Okay, what I'd like to move on to now, with that summary, and there's, will be the update on our funding. And I just wanted to bring you up to date because thanks to one of our members, naming Mr. Paul Glavy, we got a quick tutorial in, which as it were, a best pathway to secure funding, and we've prepared several documents here. So to bring you up to date, as you know, we voted to go to search for and to eventually hire, as soon as possible, a consultant, first of all, who would provide us with scenarios for the common and provide also economic impact of such scenarios so that all interested parties, such as the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and the FinCom could begin weighing in, along with the town, into where we're heading, which is namely a master plan for the common, which has to include not only just the sewage, but everything else. How are we going to achieve the revitalization of the common in detail? And by pure coincidence, the speaker tonight happened to give you sort of a background of the different approaches that she's experienced that have worked. And that's one of the reasons I brought her in, because of her broad experience in different environments, including those that resemble, and maybe not so much resemble ours, but at least we have another set of eyes that may be available to us, if that turns out to be the best one we can get. So the request for funds is based on the fact that we do already have some, in the first instance, we already have a certain amount of funding available to us from the steering committee. I believe that number is approximately $32,400, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And so in our first proposal, what we've done is modified the request for a consultant to help with the economic impact and scenarios to $30,000, so that we will be able to, shall we say, use what we already have in reserve, put that together, and hopefully the town will fund the remainder, so we could proceed with that particular vetting and hiring. And the wording of that is available to you to take a look at. There's no vote necessary. We've already agreed this is something.
this is the first one of these that you have?
Yes, it says.
Request one.
Request one, yeah. The second one is request two, which is for a particular kind of expertise, namely to look at the strengths and weaknesses of the existing zoning, not the legal, but the strength weaknesses in light of the master plan. And the reason that we're undertaking this is because it deeply affects strategy, how everything from how do we approach current property owners, how do we interact with developers, this is basically one of our major tools to make the revitalization of the common, and it turns out this practice for other areas in town. So that one is a request for $50,000 for an appropriate consultant, which we've also discussed and voted on in the meeting. So this is the text. I just want you to see what hopefully will move forward with the approval of the appropriate boards. That would be the advice given by the FinCom, and finally the decision to include in the warrant by the Board of Selectmen, and we'll await their decision.
Yep. Adam, Michael, and I met with Bonnie Fleck, otherwise universally known as Bonnie Holston.
Yeah, that sort of threw me in my email. It really went, woo.
Yeah.
It took almost an extra 30 seconds to find her.
She gave us our marching orders on how to approach this, and, if we get a specific request on the, over the transom to Keith Bergman's office over the next couple of days, we'll have it on the agenda for Monday, which is when the board will be settling on a warrant. I don't anticipate, given the previous presentation from this committee to the selectmen, there'd be any opposition, including that article. I think just the arguments for it is the greater understanding of where we're at in terms of both finances and where the monies need to be spent, both the monies we've already encumbered and the money we're requesting come from. Shouldn't be a problem, but we should both get something to the board in writing in the next couple of days if we're going to act on it tonight, and also have some representation at Monday's meeting on the 11th.
Okay, yeah. The requests that are here have been modified to reflect the conversations. Hopefully, they resonate. Okay.
Where did the numbers come from?
Which numbers?
$30,000 and $50,000?
The 30,000 comes from, the original request that I had in mind was 50,000. We already have a certain amount of money already. So it's not that I don't want 50, it's just that why ask for 50?
No, I'm just
Because-
meaning, you have
Well-
a sense of how much this is
For
likely to
what we have,
cost.
for what we have in mind, this is not a complete, these are not like master plans, they're totally comprehensive. They're primarily strategic and pointers. We already have professional staff who can do a lot of follow-up in town based on the recommendations.
I think the question is did you quantify this amount of money as being sufficient to the purpose with the types of consultants that we would hire?
There's another function called scope of work. But the answer is you put those two together, yes. And in fact, the conversation now can go forward a little more vigorously about what the scope of work could be for N number of dollars.
Mike, can I also just add, and based on our conversations with Bonnie today, there's our next charge, prior to getting any authorization, would be going out and getting quotes from, if it's under $50,000, from 3 prospective bidders. So that will help us gauge, are we in the ballpark or not? Up to this point, we're kind of dealing with guesswork. Educated guesswork.
Yeah, sure.
And the other piece, and I know Mike just said it, but I'll underscore it, is, the reality of the 30,000, that's kind of what we already have in hand with a ballpark of 50. So we know there's going to be different phases going along. So the logic of having a process to expend the 30, hopefully, is that we can start spending that money as soon as the planning board gives us the okay on it. That money's already there. The 50,000 that we'd be requesting would require a town meeting vote, and then it's available. Okay?
You got the idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next item is all of you asked, this has to do with their liaison, that's our next project, or the next topic. The board, the committee specifically requested some help and assistance in providing the tools to visit chairmen of committees that have interests. So what I've put together here with a lot of, shall we say, input and work from Anna is basically a series of shall we say, helpers and sheets for you, all right? First of all, each of you, there's on, on A, and by the way, this will be the, the package you're looking at has the individuals here and your assignments, which a lot of you volunteered for. Under B, specifically, I've given you the required instructions. And the reason I'm after this is not for control, I'm after consistency on the part of our group. So this particular set of instructions, I think there's 7 steps, is primarily intended so that we're all doing more or less the same thing and not wandering off differently, doing our own, our own things, which may be very, very good, but inconsistent. And I'd like the town to understand very clearly that this committee, as implementation, is implementing in a consistent voice. It's very, very important. So the 7 steps of an outline here came from, not out of thin air, they came from experience from both Ann and I, from visiting other committee, from visiting committee chairmen, from conversations with ex-committee chairmen, with conversation with members of various committees, to make sure that what we were doing here was direct, courteous, and at the same time effective to deliver the message. Remember, I'm going to repeat something. Our charge here is to promote and guide, not pummel and punish, okay?
Darn!
As tempting as that is for many of us here. So what I've tried to do here is, in a very formal kind of way, which, by the way, all the committee chairmen seem to be very appreciative, is to not only meet with them informally, I'm just repeating, informally over coffee or whatever it is that suits you at some suitable site at a time of mutual convenience. Tell them what you have in mind, remind them there is a master plan, you could even show them parts of it, to give a preview. And then next, repeat just about everything you've said in an email, which I've also prepared for, which has been prepared for you, which is item, I'm just skipping slightly ahead, which is item E. So you have, all you can do is just lift that from, I guess Maren can supply it to you, or you can copy it. But this is the standard letter that we want everyone who is going to visit department chairman to use in your email. So it's all done for you. All you have to do is fill it in. And just a few blanks there. And as far as making a presentation, try to keep it short. And if you want, there already is a slide collection available. You can pick and choose what you want. Maren has the current version, including the initial 7 that are there, and you can take it with you and show slides or hand out whatever you feel will work. But a good, solid presentation with some thought given to it of no more than, shall we say, 15 minutes or something like 12 to 15 minutes would be the standard to use, and be prepared to answer questions. Primarily, listen to what they have to say, because your feedback, what they feedback to you, is going to be very valuable for all of us. So please take notes as soon as you finish your meeting with the committee, and forward them immediately to Maren. Fresh notes, as you know, we're not right in the middle of a story where, of course, fresh notes are very important. But when your memory is fresh, you can submit the notes, and we can basically modify the procedures as far as we can, using your experience as a guide. Under C, some of these questions came up not only during the initial visits I made to committees that Anna made, but also when I was on the steering committee and went from, talking to people. This is not the only set of questions you're going to get. These are the ones that, at least in my visits, came up more frequently than not, including the one, with the master plan, there's no significance because the town wants to do what. There are varying forms of that, including, I hope it stays on the shelf. So this one is, you may pick up in different ways. Just want to make sure that you reinforce the notion that the plan actually was developed by the town itself, not by a bunch of people sitting in a room by themselves. So I hope C is of some use to you. Also included are the email addresses of the committee chairman, which I think all of you would find very, very useful. If you can if you happen to know them personally or know of them personally, you get their phone number, even a phone call would help. So please use all your social skills that you can muster to make the contacts. And I hope most of you, all of you, get right to work on this as soon as you possibly can.
Under 5, slides covering these and other topics, you say these are available?
Yeah, Maren has them.
You can send them to us in, in PowerPoint form,
Or
or,
PowerPoint or PDF, whichever you prefer. And
okay.
it's this, would be the same slides that are, you have copies of at the end.
Oh, these are what's here, the Master Plan Implementation Committee update.
Yeah, some of them didn't print out terribly well, but that's because they're printed out. I mean, the real color,
Okay.
so not to worry. So all the material that you need to do what you need to do is basically here.
2 questions, both innocent, maybe ignorant. Did we, was this in our email distribution packet, this information, this material? No. all right.
No, we didn't.
Well, one, I'd like to get it digitally, and 2, I'd like time to absorb it. And I think anything that, this all looks good right off the bat, but it takes some digestion. And,
The electronic version would be great, so we can literally cut and paste it and edit.
Yeah. We should have it
problem.
electronically, we should have it in advance of meetings. I mean, that's the
The
practice
reason-
with every committee that we're
Yeah,
involved with.
The reason that you didn't see it here is because you requested the material be made available. And I thought that you could have this and then follow up, obviously, digital, because we're not expecting you to cut and paste from here.
No, I understand that, I'm just saying, before a meeting, we should have it a number of days in advance. It gives it time to look it over.
Well, this is it. Look
I
over it.
don't see anything there I object to, it's
Good.
tough to.
Okay.
And as you're going through, I'll send out the files, but if there's something else you need in a different format, please just ask.
I mean, some of you already have relationships with committee chairmen, you hardly need letters of introduction. Okay, so this is more of, for those who are not used to, as it were, wandering the woods. Okay,
Can I just, we may decide that this may not be appropriate, but I was wondering whether it might not be useful to also talk, though of course they're not formal town boards, but to talk with some of the private organizations that are very much involved in some of these things. I think obviously of the Conservation Trust, which does a lot of things in terms of land use development and, preservation, or the Historical Society, which doesn't do a lot of that stuff, but might have a role going forward. I don't know.
Or the Littleton Business Association.
Okay,
I'm not
these are the ones that I know, but,
Yeah, well,
yes.
I think you're right, Jonathan. We ought to expand our, the master plan process was that expansive, and so should our implementation. I agree.
well, actually.
Maybe not now.
Well, actually, it's already started. Next week, I'll be giving the first in a series of talks, starting off with the Rotary.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
doing the circuit.
Good.
Oh, okay.
And I may elicit other people
We'll
here.
keep this board updated, because we might all have suggestions.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So that,
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's already
All right,
started.
so you already,
No, I didn't already.
Yeah, but Paul's point is good. If we know which boards, which groups you've gotten in front of, we can then say, oh, this one isn't on the list, let's get it on the list if we think it's worthwhile. And then we may even say, give you a break, and one of us who has a pre-existing relationship can facilitate that dialogue.
PTSA, the sports boosters, I mean, there's a lot of groups out there that have interest in things that are right here in this document.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'll tell you what, I will start putting together a list
Yeah.
and solicit your input.
Good.
So if you push it all to Maren, and we can all collect it in one place.
Yep.
And then we can, at the next meeting, start divvying up the speech. Fair enough. Done deal. Is that all agreeable here?
Yes, yes,
Wonderful.
yes, very good.
Okay.
Very good, Mike.
I'll assume that's a unanimous. Okay, all right. I think our next item here would be the,
Next step.
next steps until town meeting. Anna, do you want to make a comment on that?
Well, Mike is leaving.
I don't want to
Not
applaud.
permanently, just for,
Several weeks.
just for a pleasant month, yeah.
Yes.
He's going to be off having fun in Europe. But I think it's important to find out what everyone thinks we should be doing between now and town meeting. As we just discussed, we have meetings to schedule with other committees to keep us occupied. And while we await the decision on the Board of Selectmen to put the requested funds on warrant as well.
Shouldn't be a problem as long as we have some representation there, so.
I'll be there.
Do we need anything else that we should be working toward over the next 8 weeks between now and town meeting? I have something in mind, but I want to see if others.
What do you have in mind?
Date is our meeting?
October 30th, Monday?
Monday, October 3rd.
We're gonna be holding our public hearings on the senior housing and things, so you probably should.
That's a good point.
Somebody should come to that.
Yes.
Do you know the date on that yet?
That's a question we need to figure out. We thought we had it set.
Well, we still do. I mean, it's October 8th is when we're having the public hearing. Right?
Yeah, Thursday, the 5th?
5th, I meant, yeah, 5th. Maybe.
Okay. Well, one of
Lots
the,
of publicity would be really helpful if you can do that, because I think the last time the reason why
A
it
lot
was,
of people didn't know about it.
reason why it was turned down was people hadn't thought it through and didn't understand it and
Yeah,
were
this-
suspicious of it. I think maybe I was one of them who was,
Yeah, this week on Thursday afternoon, Judy's coming to town early, and we're going to work with LCTV on two programs. One is a PSA, 2 to 3 minutes, what the bylaws are, and then the second one is a longer explanation. Ed has agreed to,
You're the television star.
well, that was actually a great segue, Jonathan, because I was thinking that maybe for the work that we're trying to do around the $80,000 funding request, it might require a little bit of outreach as well to the community, so that when this is on the warrant, it's not completely out of the blue, but rather it's a connection to what was just agreed upon in the last 2 town meetings for the master plan. What are your thoughts on that? As to,
I think it's a great idea. I think the more salient question is, what's the best way to do that? I mean, we have our meetings, it's certainly gonna get discussed at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm sure the planning board will touch on it, because they'll make a determination about whether or not they support the
I
warrants.
think we have to be real specific about what we're gonna spend the money on. What are you asking these consultants to do, you know? This, anybody who's not directly involved in the process who has a doubt, it's usually like, are we just reinventing the wheel, doing what the last group did? I think it has to be presented that we are advancing, and we're getting to something more concrete. And I think to the extent that the message conveys that you endorsed this, you endorsed that, you funded this, you funded that, this is the next step. This is what you asked for, and here's what we're gonna do with the money. I think as long as we're clear about what we're gonna do with the money, then I think it's.
So maybe some type of document of talking points that, supports what we're asking for.
Right.
And then, once we have that crafted, we can determine what's the best way to disseminate it through the
Right.
community, whether
Right.
it's through social media, doing an LCTV, PSA type thing, or,
All of
bringing
the
it to
above.
some meetings, et cetera, et cetera.
You know what's gonna be discussed on the floor. and
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
it will be,
Yeah.
but the more we can anticipate and educate,
Yeah.
there may be less of that. Some people that are waking up to Jonathan coming up and raising a point will be like, I already thought about that, Jonathan, thank you for bringing it up again, but I've already, because the committee got it out there, I think that can go a long way towards making the debate shorter and ensuring passage, support, so.
well, and additionally, I think in outreach to the different committees, being able to talk about the funding request.
Are we meeting again between now and then?
Well, that was another question, was between now and then, do we want to meet? And I think it will be important to be able to meet at least once, so that we can
Yeah.
make sure that we're doing this kind of public
Either the
outreach.
End of this month or the beginning of the next month, something like that.
I mean, the bottom line is that if by chance this doesn't go on the warrant, then we,
It will.
we don't have reason to go out and talk to folks, but assuming that it does, then yes, we definitely want to get out there.
I think it'd be reasonable to charge one or two of us to come up with that type of document, working with Maren to make sure that we don't step on our own toes. And then we can meet to vet it as a group, sans leadership.
Happy to volunteer for that.
I'm certainly willing to put my 2 cents worth in on it as well.
Okay, that sounds like a
And
plan.
Anna brought up the idea, so she has to help too.
Oh, she's leading it, there's no
Right,
question
yes.
about it, yeah.
Isn't that enough? Okay. So should we schedule that one next meeting then?
That would be a good idea.
So we basically have,
Beginning of October.
what, 7 weeks till town meeting? Does that seem about
We
right?
might want to meet, at least once, maybe twice between now and then, but whatever. I know you would recommend it, and I support that. Once a month is enough, as long as we're doing our work in
Yeah.
between.
Let's
But-
schedule one and see, and make it early-ish.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if we feel at that meeting that there's more work to be done, we can roll forward another meeting.
This is more tied to my schedule than it is to the work of the committee after I depart. However, briefly, I've been playing tag with one of the reporters from the local newspaper for an interview, which I regard as a form of advertisement.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm not stepping on anyone's toes
No,
here.
not at all.
If I can get that scheduled beforehand, to work that out, I'll get it done. If not, I'll hand it off
You
to.
have discretion as the chair to do many of those things.
Sure.
Yes, no, I just want to
Don't need our
make,
approval.
no, you're
Believe me,
away.
if you screw
I'll
up,
be
Mike, we'll let
away.
you know.
You keep reporting, but I don't want to take advantage of your good natures, okay? Okay.
So what are we looking at for dates then?
Is October 3rd too late? That's,
That's probably
I
good.
think that's good.
because then that still gives us almost,
And all I'd encourage is, anything we got for printed material that we have in advance of that, please send it out in advance.
The document we craft will definitely, to support the warrants, will definitely be out before that. We can vet it then.
Martin, does that date conflict with anything else that might be going on?
Probably. Who knows?
It might conflict with me, I may be out of town, that's the only,
Okay,
so,
well, we can get your input via.
okay.
Yeah,
Online.
and actually, for scheduling, we can always email each other.
Right.
For that.
Any other discussion on that topic?
Nope.
Okay, I think we are at looking at the minutes for the last meeting, August 1st.
I had just a few typo type things. So some of the language in the notes just sounds like it's being typed verbatim, and it can be a little confusing because it's following our actual words.
Well, so, yes.
So would you like me to say what those are, the two areas that are just a little confusing?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
That way you can get the input from the
Okay,
members.
so page 2, third paragraph down, it starts with Gary. Third sentence, it says, heavy lifting of implementation, or to be a policeman to see what others are doing their part. So I assume that that's just not.
I think that sounds exactly like Gary, but I think we
See
should clean it up
whether
anyway.
Yeah, so that just needs to be cleaned up.
Should it be weather?
Are you a good cop or a bad cop?
That's an accurate representation of what I said. Is your point being the fact that it goes from third person to first person?
Something like that. But just in terms of the notes, yeah, just making sure the notes. And then the only other verbatim one was on page 3.
And there's a typo in where you're quoting something that I might well have said, and you say thin instead of think. This is in the second paragraph from the bottom of page 2.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, we all do that sort of thing.
And then the other verbatim on page 3 is a second full paragraph that starts with Mr. Zeldin. That one also doesn't quite make sense. Mr. Zeldin stated that what he is hearing is we do in fact want to focus
Now,
on.
what didn't make sense, the writing or Mr. Zeldin? Do you choose?
I always make sense. The rest of you are up for grabs.
And then finally, on that same page, the next Mr. Zeldin paragraph, it says the second one is
Noting a trend
equitable
here,
development.
Madam Chair.
It should be economic development.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's it, and that was it.
motion to accept the meeting minutes as amended by Ms. Houston.
Wait, any further discussion on the notes?
No, I will second that with the observation that Maren Toohill's probably the best minutes taker I have ever encountered since Linda Nupp passed away, God rest her soul. Anyway,
I thought you were going to cite Churchill's secretary. I'm very surprised that you went so local. All those in favor, signify. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? To accept the minutes? Any opposed? It carries. I'll be happy to now entertain anything from the public.
Thank you for the wonderful job you're on.
Okay. If there's no further business or discussion, anyone wish to make a comment? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Nope, you second.
All those, I hear a second. Discussion is ended. All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.